On this day 25 years ago, man, already 25 years, rap lost its biggest icon at the time. He was arguably the artist of the decade, and that was the one and only Tupac Shakur, who got shot fatally that night in Las Vegas, Nevada, mere hours after the Mike Tyson Bruce Seldon fight. And it was honestly one of rap's biggest losses. Tupac was ready to take over the world of rap. He was already taking the music industry by storm, and he was at the top of his game. There's been theories out there of, oh, Tupac's still in Cuba, that Crips did it, that cops did it. Many, many theories that haven't really been answered, that many people are still speculating to this day. I know what you're thinking. Well, the video says, who shot Biggie Smalls? This is just part one of many videos that will come out over the upcoming months. Just part one. All these theories and many facts that have been displayed, I cannot talk about in one video. I'm getting my facts based off of the Unsolved docuseries that is on Netflix, and I'm getting them off of the Labyrinth book written by Randall Sullivan and co-written by Russell Poole. And I'm idolizing Russell Poole. Like Russell Poole, I have many beliefs. I believe almost everything that guy says. Not really worshiping him, but he's a man of the truth. I'm a man of the truth. And after you guys see these videos, maybe you guys will be a fan of the truth as well, or you guys will come up with a totally different opinion of what truly happened. But Russell Poole said, I believe that Tupac's murder is directly linked to Biggie's murder. And I'm going to go in chronological order here because, as I mentioned, today was the day Tupac Shakur got shot 25 years ago. Biggie's murder didn't happen until March 1997. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to drop another video in March directly after this video, but I'm just going to start here, and I'm going to start with what happened that night, and I'm going to start with the theories and many, many other just outlandish claims and insane stories that led to the injustice of this murder just being one of the biggest conspiracies of all time. I'm going down the sleuthing avenue. I am going to try and do what the cops couldn't do, and that's solve it. And who knows, maybe this murder will never be solved, but I'm going to dive deep into what happened to the murders of Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls. So buckle up, because these are videos that you do not want to miss. You guys, these are videos that I have been totally balls deep in. I've seen every documentary, I've seen every movie, I've read every book about these murders. So you guys know I am not making this up. These are straight facts. Tupac Shakur, as I mentioned, one of rap's biggest icons. He had over 75 million records worldwide. Many of them went platinum. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2017 and into the Hip Hop Hall of Fame in 2002. He had many, many hit songs, from Hit 'Em Up to Ambitions as a Rider to California Love to Changes. But not only did he take the music industry by storm, he took the movie industry by storm with great hood classics, from Juice to Poetic Justice and Above the Rim. He is one of the many, many rappers that went into acting, and he made one of the most famous basketball movies of all time. The Wrath of Tupac was real in the middle of the 90s. It was him and Biggie at the top. Nobody else could compare to those two. Now, as I mentioned before, there was many theories that, blood and Crips, whatever. Like I said, basically, I'm going to put this in a nutshell. Death Row, who was ran by Suge Knight, is a blood organized group. Many Bloods that were in the streets went on to work for Suge, whether it be in security or actual music projects. Whereas the Crips, they did their own thing. There were theories that Crips were involved in Biggie's murder. There was theories that Crips worked for Biggie. I'll get into that in other videos. But you guys know the history. I don't have to go into the theories or the actual history of the Crips and Bloods beef. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But this whole thing actually started about 3 weeks before Tupac's murder actually happened. And that was a few members of Death Row were in a mall, basically just, doing some shopping. And then finally, Orlando Anderson stumbled upon them. Now, there were rumors a few months back that Crips were out there saying, if you could go out and take a Death Row medallion off of a Death Row member, then you'll get a reward of some sort. So basically, Orlando Anderson saw a member of Death Row Records, also known as Bloods, and got in a fight over a chain. You could see those chains out in Zoomies. Not many people know what they meant, but believe me, by the end of these videos, you'll know what death row means. Not just the prison slang, but what the actual production company and music company means. So that scuffle happened. The death row member retained his chain, and that was the flame that ignited the fire into what all this happened. So we go to the night of September 6th, 1996, leading into September 7th. Now, the fight with Mike Tyson and Bruce Seldon happened. We all know Mike Tyson's fights at the time were not long. They would end in 8 seconds, 30 seconds, 40 seconds. They would end. And Tupac Shakur was a big fan of Mike Tyson. Not only a big fan, they were best friends. They resonated with each other off of the fact that they were both in prison. Let's not forget, Tupac Shakur went to jail for his accused rape of Ayanna Jackson from 1994 to 1996, spent about 2.5 years in the New York State Penitentiary. So they both resonate off of that. And not only that, but Mike Tyson and Tupac had the same upbringing. They both were basically came from nothing. True rags to riches stories. So Mike Tyson won the fight in devastating and quick fashion. Tupac Shakur said, "I counted 50 blows, 50. Nobody plays like Mike." He was still hyped. He worshiped Mike the way I worship Conor McGregor. I'll just put it like that. So after the fight, death row members, including Tupac, walking through the MGM Grand, and they stumble upon Orlando Anderson. Now, once they see Orlando Anderson, Tupac went and basically sucker punched Orlando Anderson, and the rest of the death row members basically jumped Orlando Anderson, even Suge Knight. And you can see in the security footage, Suge Knight is kicking Orlando, Tupac is kicking. They just basically jumped Orlando. So after the brawl, they went back to Tupac's hotel, which was at the Luxor, which I stayed in when I went to Vegas last time. They went back to the Luxor to get ready to go to Suge Knight's club, the 662, and Frank Alexander, who was one of the bodyguards that night for Tupac Shakur and was a close friend of Tupac Shakur, was very skeptical. He did not think that they should go to this club, especially with the East Coast, West Coast beef basically on the rise. You had fights breaking out here, fights breaking out there. Anybody that was involved in Bad Boy Records and Death Row Records, it was on site. The beef was real between those two. And let's not forget, Tupac Shakur got shot November of 1993 and basically, got jacked, got ran on basically. And I don't know if that's a good choice of words, but basically got jacked in the lobby of Bad Boy Records, Quad Studios. And Biggie released the song, "Who Shot Ya?" Not sure if that was a smart thing to do, but he released it, which therefore made Tupac retaliate with the song "Hit 'Em Up." And ever since then, he threw shots at Biggie, he threw shots at Lil C's, threw shots at P. Diddy. The whole industry of bad boy entertainment was thrown under the bus after Tupac got shot and after he released the song. So just wanted to backtrack there a little bit. The East Coast, West Coast beef was on the rise. So after that, Frank Alexander was basically the only guy that was skeptical, but Tupac talked him into it. So they finally went to the party. They first went to Suge Knight's house so he could show off a few more death row stuff. But after that, they went to the party. Suge Knight went on Flamingo, wanted to go in with a grand entrance. For those who don't know, Suge Knight liked to make an entrance. Like, he wanted to just tell people, "Hey, I'm here." He would even show up late to parties or venues on purpose to just make a grand entrance. Even to this fight, the Mike Tyson Bruce Seldon fight, he showed up literally as the fighters were getting announced for the main event. So they go on Flamingo, then they hit Koval, which is where Tupac ultimately demised. And Tupac got shot 4 times, twice in the chest, once in the arm, and once in the thigh. And one of the bullets hit Tupac's right lung. And although he didn't die on the spot, it was announced 6 days later that Tupac Shakur basically died. So lots to take in, first episode, there was theories about Keefe D and Suge Knight. They grew up together in Compton. Obviously, Suge Knight, Crips and Bloods, explained all that earlier. But Keefe D was the uncle to Orlando Anderson. Now, there's still theories, none of which Tupac is still alive. I heard those theories that, oh, Tupac's in Cuba. If you think Tupac is alive in Cuba, you're full of shit. That's all I have to say. But they drove a white Cadillac. Now, people are thinking to believe that Tupac got shot by Orlando Anderson. It's the right motive. It all lines up. Orlando Anderson got beat up and he wanted revenge. It was time. It was time to really send a message. So it lines up good, but nobody's really proved that. And that's what's the most confusing thing about all of this. But here's the biggest 3 questions I have after Tupac's murder. And that is, why did Orlando Anderson testify on Suge's behalf? Which leads into my second question. Did Suge Knight pay Compton, did Suge Knight pay the guy that Compton PD thinks killed Tupac, which is Orlando Anderson? I think so. Because why would Orlando Anderson testify on Suge Knight's behalf? That's why he went to prison, for kicking Orlando Anderson. Could it be Suge Knight paid Orlando Anderson, all right, kill Tupac? Because there were also other speculations that Suge Knight owed Tupac about $3 million from his last album. Then there was other speculations that basically Tupac was getting too big and that Suge Knight just wanted him to get got, and there was no other way to do it but have a staged beating. And that's what happened. I want to say that's what happened, but that's what was proclaimed in the Labyrinth book written by Randall Sullivan, was that, something fishy was going on that night. Russell Poole even said it's almost as if Orlando Anderson was waiting for Tupac and Suge and the rest of the death row guys to come and beat him up. Maybe that was just the fuel that Orlando Anderson needed. Therefore, Suge Knight paid Orlando Anderson, and therefore he's like, all right, I paid you to kill Pac. You did it. Now I'm going to need you to testify for me to get out of jail. You're going to see this the more I do these videos, that Suge Knight was a very powerful man. He was basically a mafia owner. Every time Suge Knight was in the news for a crime that he so-called committed, he would get off with more than a slap on the wrist. And he even went to jail for kicking Orlando Anderson, but only got out about 2 days later. The final question. Frank Alexander, as I mentioned, was one of the only security guards working for Tupac that night. Why wasn't he armed? He said, basically, I didn't take my gun. Why not? If he knew the state of the world and the beef that was going on between East Coast and West Coast, why did he not take his gun? That puzzles me. This whole thing puzzles me because it just seems as if Vegas did not want to solve this murder. Not only that, but it leads into my final point, is that nobody talks. Let's not forget, as powerful as these guys were and as financially successful these guys were, they were still gangsters. They were still thugs. They lived by the street code. They weren't like today where people would rat people out. No, they lived by the ultimate street code of, I'm not going to snitch. I'm not going to snitch on Suge because Suge will have you dead. I'm not going to snitch on this guy because therefore I'll be exiled from that gang. There was many people that were afraid of Suge and afraid of what he could do if you were to cross people. And as I mentioned, I just think this final theory is that Suge Knight definitely paid Orlando Anderson, and definitely that was the tool to help Orlando Anderson testify on Suge's behalf. And so ultimately is still, I would say, the wall onto why this case ain't getting into the territory of an arrest or getting looked at more or even getting rejuvenated 25 years later, albeit a lot of the evidence is gone. But that's just my theory, guys. I think that's just the facts that was displayed, essentially. And Tupac, may he rest in peace. I think it was inevitable. I think with the beef coming to an all-time high, that Tupac's life was in danger, especially with him just getting so big. There wasn't a rapper as big as he was in the 90s. And many people thought that, if he would have just stayed in, he would have just been fine. But I thought it was kind of inevitable. And I think Suge Knight is just that powerful that he paid off a lot of people to simply get the things done that he needed to get done. So there you have it. But one more thing I should mention real quick is that Suge Knight back then basically owned Las Vegas. He was a big deal. He was a very popular football star for UNLV, and it even got him into the NFL. Although he didn't play a single down in the NFL, he was one of those guys that would play in the preseason but not in the regular season. He was a big deal. And not only that, but he got into his share of crimes that would put any other perpetrator behind bars for a number of years. He got off with nothing but a slap on the wrist. So Vegas was essentially his home away from home, even though he grew up in Compton. He got his first taste of, I can do this down here and nothing will do shit to me. Nobody will do shit to me. So he figured, why not just get Orlando Anderson to simply kill Tupac, especially after they just kicked his ass that night. It would line up good in the police reports. It would line up good in the news outlets. But it just goes back on everything else because there's still a lot of people unsure. I'm not unsure. This is exactly what happened. I know I call it a theory, but no, this is exactly what happened. People say, live by the sword, die by the sword, and it leads to that nobody talks. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe. Comment on what you believed happened to Tupac Shakur that night. What is your favorite song from Tupac? What is your favorite movie from Tupac? Just go ahead, smash those comments. And most of all, subscribe for more weekly content. I promise it is something you do not want to miss.